The person who feels chronically unsafe, despite living in secure circumstances, who can't express needs even in relationships where it should be safe, who struggles with self-worth that no external achievement improves, often searches for psychological explanations, but might also encounter the chakra system, a framework from yogic and tantric traditions that maps emotional and psychological patterns onto 7 locations along the spine. The chakra model isn't asking you to believe in mystical energy that Western science hasn't measured. It's offering a somatic map, a way of understanding how different survival needs, emotional capacities, and developmental stages show up as sensations, blockages, or flow in specific regions of the body. Whether the chakras are literal energy centers or useful metaphors matters less than whether the framework helps you locate and work with patterns that would otherwise remain abstract. The person stuck in survival mode, unable to trust or feel grounded, is described in chakra terms as having a blocked root chakra. Whether you frame that as nervous system dysregulation, attachment trauma, or energy blockage, the experience and the work required to shift it remain largely the same. The experience of feeling ungrounded shows up across contexts in predictable ways. At work, someone with root chakra issues might be competent and accomplished, yet constantly anxious about job security, unable to relax even when performance reviews are excellent. In relationships, they might choose partners based entirely on stability rather than genuine connection, or avoid commitment entirely because depending on anyone feels dangerous. Financially, they either hoard compulsively or spend recklessly, both patterns reflecting the same underlying insecurity about having enough. Physically, they might experience chronic tension in legs and lower back, digestive issues, or immune dysfunction that conventional medicine treats symptomatically without addressing underlying nervous system dysregulation. The anxiety persists regardless of external reassurance because the issue isn't rational assessment of actual threat. It's a developmental pattern where basic safety was never established, leaving the nervous system stuck in perpetual scanning for danger. Sacral chakra blockages manifest differently, but with equal consistency. Someone might go through life emotionally numb, able to function but never really feeling anything deeply. They describe themselves as logical or practical, dismissing emotions as irrational, not recognizing that the numbness is a protective response to early experiences where feeling was overwhelming or unwelcome. Or they might swing to the opposite extreme, drowning in emotional reactivity, every interaction triggering disproportionate responses they can't modulate. Creativity feels either completely inaccessible or desperately important yet perpetually blocked. Sexual experiences happen but feel mechanical or shame-laden rather than genuinely pleasurable. Pleasure in general requires justification. They can only enjoy things if they've earned them through productivity, and even then the enjoyment feels guilty or incomplete. The underlying pattern is disconnection from the flow of feeling, whether that manifests as suppression or overwhelm. Solar plexus dysfunction shows clearly in autonomy and boundaries. Some people completely lack them, saying yes to every request, accommodating everyone's needs while their own remain perpetually unmet. They feel resentful but can't identify why because they're the ones who agreed to everything. Others swing to rigid control, micromanaging every aspect of life and becoming anxious or angry when things don't go according to plan. Neither extreme represents healthy personal power. One has given it away entirely, the other is desperately clinging to it because they can't trust anything outside their control. In groups, these patterns create recognizable dynamics. The person with weak boundaries gets volunteered for tasks others don't want to do. The person with rigid control dominates meetings and dismisses others' input. Both end up isolated, though for opposite reasons. The chakra system describes 7 primary centers starting at the base of the spine and moving upward to the crown of the head. Each corresponds to physical location associated nerve plexuses and endocrine glands, psychological themes, developmental stages, and particular emotional challenges. The root chakra at the base of the spine, called Muladhara in Sanskrit, relates to basic survival needs: safety, security, grounding, connection to physical reality, trust that needs will be met. The color traditionally associated with it is red, the element is earth, and it governs legs, feet, bones, colon, and adrenal glands. When this center functions well, there's baseline sense of okayness, of being able to trust the ground beneath you literally and metaphorically. When blocked or underdeveloped, chronic anxiety pervades regardless of external circumstances, manifesting as either excessive caution and rigidity or reckless disregard for actual safety. The sacral chakra, Swadhisthana, sits below the navel in the lower abdomen. It governs pleasure, creativity, emotional flow, sexuality, desire, and the capacity to experience life as something more than survival. The associated color is orange, the element water, and it connects to reproductive organs, bladder, kidneys, and the lymphatic system. Functioning well here means comfort with pleasure without guilt, ability to feel and express emotions appropriately, creative expression that flows rather than feeling forced, and sexuality experienced as natural rather than shameful or compulsive. Blocked, it manifests as emotional numbness or volatility, creative paralysis, shame around pleasure or sexuality, or compulsive pursuit of sensation that never satisfies because the underlying issue is inability to actually receive and metabolize experience. The solar plexus chakra, Manipura, rests between navel and sternum at the body's energetic center. It relates to personal power, will, autonomy, self-esteem, identity separate from others, and capacity to act in the world. The color is yellow, element fire, and it governs digestive system, liver, pancreas, and metabolism. When functioning, there's confidence without arrogance, ability to assert needs without aggression, clear sense of self that doesn't require constant external validation. Blocked, it manifests as either excessive control and inability to trust anything outside your management or complete lack of boundaries and inability to say no, with most people oscillating between these poles depending on context. Digestive issues often accompany solar plexus imbalance. The body can't process experience any more than it can process food efficiently. The heart chakra, Anahata, sits at the center of the chest, serving as bridge between lower chakras concerned with survival and individual identity, and upper chakras concerned with expression and connection beyond self. It governs love, compassion, connection, grief, forgiveness, and the capacity to both give and receive care. The color is green, element air, and it connects to heart, lungs, circulatory system, and thymus gland involved in immune function. Functioning well means relationships feel nourishing rather than depleting. Boundaries exist without becoming walls. Grief can be felt and processed without overwhelming or destroying, and there's capacity for genuine intimacy that doesn't require fusion or enmeshment. Blocked, it shows up as either emotional unavailability and isolation, where vulnerability feels too dangerous to risk, or excessive caretaking and lack of boundaries, where you're so busy managing everyone else's feelings you have none of your own. Physical manifestations include heart palpitations, respiratory issues, and immune dysfunction. The throat chakra, Vishuddha, at the base of the throat governs expression, authenticity, truth-telling, communication, and the capacity to give voice to internal experience. The color is blue, element ether or space, and it connects to throat, thyroid, vocal cords, mouth, and ears. When open, words match internal reality, needs can be articulated clearly, authentic self-expression feels possible without excessive fear of consequences, and communication serves connection rather than protecting image. Blocked, it manifests as chronic people-pleasing and inability to speak truth, constant accommodation while resentment builds silently, or alternatively as harsh, unfiltered expression that damages relationships because truth gets weaponized rather than offered in service of connection. Physical symptoms include chronic sore throat, thyroid issues, jaw tension, and teeth grinding. The third eye chakra, ajna, between and slightly above the eyebrows, governs intuition, insight, imagination, pattern recognition, and the capacity to see beyond literal surface reality into deeper meaning and connection. The color is indigo, and it relates to pituitary gland, brain, eyes, and neurological system. Functioning means trusting inner knowing alongside rational analysis, seeing patterns others miss, imagination that serves creativity and problem-solving rather than trapping you in fantasy. Blocked shows as either rigid literalism that dismisses intuition and can't tolerate ambiguity, or ungrounded fantasy disconnected from practical reality where everything becomes symbolic meaning without concrete action. Some people are stuck entirely in rational left-brain thinking, dismissing any information that can't be measured. Others are lost in right-brain intuition without grounding, seeing signs and synchronicity everywhere but unable to function practically. The crown chakra, Sahasrara, at the top of the head, relates to connection with something larger than individual self, whether framed as spirituality, collective consciousness, universal intelligence, purpose beyond personal survival, or simply recognition that you're part of something beyond your own story. The color is violet or white, and it connects to pineal gland, cerebral cortex, and central nervous system. Functioning means sense of meaning and connection without needing rigid belief systems to provide it, ability to hold existential questions without requiring definitive answers, and recognition of interconnection without losing individual identity. Blocked manifests as either nihilistic meaninglessness, where nothing matters and life feels empty, or rigid dogmatism that can't tolerate questions or ambiguity, needing absolute certainty about how reality works and what it means. Western attempts to map chakras onto anatomy have linked them with nerve plexuses where neural pathways branch to innervate different body regions, and with endocrine glands that secrete hormones affecting physiological and emotional states. The root chakra corresponds roughly to the pelvic plexus and adrenal glands that regulate stress response, producing cortisol and adrenaline when threat is perceived. The sacral chakra aligns with the hypogastric plexus and reproductive glands, producing sex hormones that affect not just reproduction, but mood, energy, and emotional regulation. Solar plexus matches the celiac plexus and pancreas involved in digestion and blood sugar regulation, explaining why digestive issues so often accompany autonomy and control struggles. Heart chakra connects to cardiac plexus and thymus involved in immune function, explaining the correlation between emotional suppression and immune dysfunction. Throat chakra aligns with pharyngeal plexus and thyroid, regulating metabolism and energy, with thyroid dysfunction often accompanying expression issues. Third eye corresponds to regions involving pituitary gland that controls other endocrine functions and integrates body systems. Crown chakra relates to pineal gland involved in circadian rhythms, consciousness states, and possibly mystical experiences. These correlations don't prove chakras are real in the way organs are real. They suggest the framework might be mapping psychological and emotional patterns onto somatic locations where those patterns register physiologically. The adaptive function of organizing psychological development this way is creating a sequential map. The chakras are often described as hierarchical. You can't authentically access higher chakras without establishing foundation in lower ones. Someone struggling with basic safety and survival will have difficulty accessing genuine compassion or authentic self-expression because the nervous system is consumed with threat detection. Someone who hasn't developed healthy boundaries and sense of separate self will struggle with genuine intimacy because enmeshment gets confused with connection. This isn't mysticism, it's developmental psychology mapped onto the body. Maslow's hierarchy of needs, physiological needs, safety, belonging, esteem, self-actualization, transcendence, follows similar logic. You can't effectively address self-actualization while basic needs remain unfulfilled. Unmet. The chakra system adds somatic dimension, suggesting these developmental stages and psychological capacities have physical locations where blockages register as tension, numbness, pain, or dysfunction. Each chakra's themes show up in relationships and social contexts in recognizable patterns. Someone with underdeveloped root chakra might choose relationships based entirely on security, staying in situations that are emotionally barren or even harmful because they provide financial safety or predictability. Or they might avoid commitment entirely, seeing any dependence as a dangerous threat to survival, remaining isolated despite loneliness. Their insecurity triggers others' caretaking or frustration, creating dynamics where they're either rescued or abandoned, reinforcing the original fear that the world isn't safe. Someone with blocked sacral chakra might attract partners who are emotionally unavailable, mirroring their own discomfort with feeling. Or they might pursue intense emotional drama, confusing intensity with genuine connection, needing constant stimulation because they can't tolerate the stillness where actual feeling happens. Their emotional suppression or volatility affects everyone around them, with others either shutting down to match the numbness or becoming hyper-emotional to compensate for the void. Someone stuck in solar plexus issues might dominate conversations, unable to tolerate anyone else having authority or expertise, needing to be right about everything to maintain fragile sense of identity. Or they might disappear entirely, unable to assert any preferences or needs, becoming whoever others need them to be until they don't know who they actually are anymore. In groups, they either take over or fade into the background, rarely able to participate as equals who have both something to offer and something to learn. Heart chakra patterns determine whether relationships feel nourishing or draining. Someone with underdeveloped heart chakra might intellectualize emotions, staying in their head to avoid the vulnerability of feeling, able to analyze relationships endlessly but unable to be present in them. Or they might love intensely but without boundaries, becoming enmeshed and then burned out when the other person can't meet needs that were never articulated clearly. Throat chakra blockages show up clearly in communication patterns. Someone might agree outwardly while seething internally, then erupt unpredictably when suppressed frustration finally overflows in ways that damage trust. Or they might be brutally honest in ways that wound, unable to modulate expression for context, confusing authentic expression with permission to say anything regardless of impact. Others respond by either trying to read their mind or walking on eggshells, creating the very disconnection the person fears. Working with chakras somatically involves bringing attention to each physical location and noticing what's present without trying to fix or change anything immediately. Starting with the root, bring awareness to the base of the spine and pelvic floor. What sensations are present? Is there tension, numbness, openness, contraction, warmth, coolness? Without trying to change anything, just notice for several breaths. Then consider the psychological themes. How safe do you feel in your life right now? What relationship do you have with basic needs? Can you trust that you'll be okay, or is there constant underlying anxiety about survival even when circumstances are objectively secure? If tension or blockage is present, explore what small, concrete action might address root chakra themes. That might mean creating more predictable routine if chaos and unpredictability trigger anxiety. It might mean addressing an actual safety issue you've been avoiding, financial instability, living situation that genuinely isn't secure, or relationship that's actually threatening. Or it might mean working with a therapist on attachment trauma that keeps the nervous system stuck in threat mode even when current circumstances are safe. The work isn't visualizing red energy clearing, it's addressing the actual psychological and practical issues that register in that location. For sacral chakra, bring attention to the area below the navel in the lower abdomen. Notice sensations, warmth, coolness, tightness, spaciousness, flow, or stagnation. Then explore the themes without judgment. What's your relationship with pleasure? Can you enjoy things without guilt, or does every pleasure need to be earned through suffering first? Can you feel emotions without being overwhelmed by them or needing to shut them down immediately? Is creative expression something that flows naturally or something that feels blocked and forced, requiring perfect conditions that never quite arrive? If this area feels blocked, consider what might help. That could be as simple as intentionally engaging with pleasure, taking time for activities you enjoy without needing to justify them as productive or useful. It might mean allowing emotions to be felt and expressed rather than suppressed as irrational or inappropriate. It might mean creative practice not for outcome or achievement, but for the experience of flow itself. Solar plexus work involves attention at the area between navel and sternum, noticing what's present: tension, openness, heat, emptiness, strength, or weakness. Then examining themes honestly. How clear is your sense of self separate from others? Can you assert needs and preferences without either aggression or complete collapse? What's your relationship with personal power and autonomy? Do you trust yourself to make decisions, or do you need constant external validation? If this area feels blocked, work might involve practicing saying no in low-stakes situations, noticing what fear arises and whether predicted consequences actually occur. It might mean examining where you've given away power and taking small actions to reclaim it. Speaking up in a meeting where you usually stay silent, making a decision without polling everyone for their opinion first, or setting a boundary where you typically accommodate. Or if the issue is excessive control, work might mean practicing allowing things to unfold without micromanaging, tolerating discomfort of not being in charge of every detail. Heart chakra attention centers at the chest, noticing physical sensations and emotional quality present. What's happening in your chest right now? Openness, constriction, warmth, armor? Then exploring themes. Can you give and receive? Care without either walls or enmeshment? Can you grieve losses without being destroyed by them? Can you love others while maintaining your own boundaries and identity? Work here might involve intentionally receiving care from others if you typically only give. Practicing asking for help with something small and noticing the vulnerability that arises. Or setting boundaries on caretaking if you typically overextend, saying no to a request even though the person will be disappointed. It might mean allowing yourself to feel grief that's been suppressed, creating space to cry or process losses you've been pushing through. Or reconnecting with people you've walled off from defensively, taking small risks toward vulnerability. Throat chakra attention brings awareness to throat and jaw, noticing tension or openness, constriction or flow. Then themes. Can you speak truth even when it might displease others? Can you express needs clearly without either aggressive demands or apologetic hedging? Or do you either suppress constantly, saying what you think others want to hear, or express without filter, saying everything that crosses your mind regardless of impact? Work might involve practicing stating preferences in situations where you usually accommodate, noticing fear that arises and whether relationship actually collapses as feared. Or if pattern is oversharing or harsh honesty, practicing filtering for context, honoring truth while considering impact, finding ways to be authentic that don't require treating every thought as sacred that must be expressed immediately. Third eye attention focuses between and slightly above eyebrows, noticing subtle sensations, pressure, openness, clarity, or fog. Then themes. Can you trust intuition while staying grounded in practical reality? Can you see patterns and possibilities without losing touch with what's actually happening? Work might involve honoring intuitive hunches instead of dismissing them as irrational, taking small actions based on inner knowing even without logical justification. Or if pattern is excessive fantasy and ungrounded spirituality, deliberately engaging with practical, concrete tasks that require presence. What is rather than what might be. Handling finances, organizing physical space, or completing projects that demand focus on material reality. Crown attention rests at top of head, noticing openness or restriction, connection or isolation. Then themes. Do you feel connected to something larger than yourself, or isolated in meaninglessness, where nothing has purpose beyond survival? Are you dogmatically attached to specific beliefs about what life means, or completely untethered without any sense of why you're here? Work involves finding meaningful connection, whether through nature, community, creative expression, service, or contemplative practice, that provides sense of purpose without requiring rigid beliefs. Recognizing you're part of something larger while maintaining individual identity. Integration means recognizing chakras aren't separate systems, but aspects of one whole. Working on one affects others. Addressing root chakra safety creates foundation for heart chakra openness. You can't risk vulnerability until basic safety is established. Developing solar plexus autonomy makes throat chakra expression possible. You can't speak truth until you have enough sense of separate self to tolerate others' reactions. Framework becomes useful when it helps map your particular patterns, showing where attention and work would be most productive. Someone might recognize they've spent years working on upper chakras, developing insight, spiritual practice, authentic expression, while neglecting lower ones, leaving them spiritually sophisticated, but unable to maintain relationships, hold employment, or feel grounded in their body. Work then becomes deliberately attending to what's been bypassed, building safety, developing healthy boundaries, learning to tolerate pleasure. Or someone might be entirely focused on survival and security, never developing capacity for authentic expression, creative flow, or meaningful purpose beyond getting through each day. Work involves slowly building capacity for higher centers without abandoning foundation. The person who feels chronically unsafe despite secure circumstances has options once they understand this framework. They can recognize pattern as root chakra material, direct attention to base of spine, notice what sensations are present, and explore what might address underlying survival fear. Whether therapy for developmental trauma, building genuine support networks, addressing actual practical instabilities they've been ignoring, or somatic practices that help nervous system recalibrate from threat to safety. They can acknowledge that no amount of intellectual understanding or spiritual practice will resolve it without addressing foundational safety need. And they can recognize framework, whether describing literal energy or serving as useful metaphor, helps locate patterns in body where they can be worked with rather than remaining abstract psychological concepts that never translate into lived change. Chakras don't need to be mystical to be useful. They just need to help you find where you're stuck and what might help you move.